Proverbs chapter 9. This is the last section, last discourse, and before we get into the actual Proverbs. You see, we haven't actually read any Proverbs yet. These have all been extended lessons on certain topics, and they really are just preparing us for the feast of the Proverbs that begins in chapter 10. So, this final one is very appropriate because it's it's an invitation to the feast. And we see wisdom, Lady Wisdom, she's personified. She's inviting people to a feast at her house that she has built. And then we see Lady Folly, also personified, who's inviting people to not really a feast at her house, more like a party, a sinful party. And that's the options we have. That is the call in this world. There are two options. There are two paths, as Jesus taught in Matthew chapter 7, and there are two meals you can eat at. And the invitation is open to all who would come to Lady Wisdom. Now, remember, Lady Wisdom is just a personification of, hey, do you want to commit to living your life based on God's word? Not just in your mind with your thoughts, thinking rightly, but also in your behavior. It's so very similar and almost identical to the call to be a Christian that we have in the new covenant. Are you committing to coming to Christ and agreeing with him about what sin is, about your state before God without a Savior, about what he did on the cross on your behalf, about pledging your life, i.e., picking up your cross daily and following him? Will you do those things? That's the option that is available to every single person that hears the gospel, just like every single person who hears the call of wisdom can live it. Now, a difference is when you hear the call of wisdom and begin reading the book of Proverbs, you see how impossible it is to do. I mean, it takes a very smart, self-disciplined, godly man to be wise. And you will come up against your own limitations when trying to be wise because you can't. It's like just trying to be patient in regards to something that you're just not patient about. I mean, you can't just will that out of nothing. This is why the gospel is so much better. This is why they're not the same, because it's a hint at towards the gospel. See, wisdom says, hey, come and eat and live this way. And you say, I can't. The gospel says, hey, come and admit that you can't and then eat. Whereas wisdom seeks to reveal your weakness. The gospel begins with your weakness. Jesus begins the Sermon on the Mount. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who recognize that they are spiritually starving and have nothing. They can't go on. They're at the end of their rope. And they want to do this thing with God, but why would God accept them? And that's where the gospel finds us and wants us to begin our journey with him. Wisdom is a little more like it's almost like it oversimplifies it for some of us who are naturally a little more foolish. It's like, oh yeah, must be easy, or easier said than done, knowing, the difference between these things. And we're going to get into those. So The way of wisdom is an open invitation. And in a lot of ways, Proverbs and really just wisdom, which is the main fruit that comes out of the fear of the Lord. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and that is the source of life. Fearing the Lord, you could say salvation, that's really the fear of the Lord. And the fruit that comes out of that is wisdom. And so we have Proverbs, we have Job, we have Ecclesiastes, all these wisdom books together, Song of Solomon, and of course Psalms. And wisdom paints the ideal picture of what it's like to follow it. Job shows that even when you follow it, you may suffer. So you got to add that into your theology of wisdom. Ecclesiastes shows us that you can have all the wisdom and create all the blessings in your life, but still there's going to be something missing. And so Proverbs and really the wisdom in general is so central to the Bible because when we look at Jesus and his life, we see the embodiment of wisdom. When we read the epistles, Paul shows us how wisdom is applied to church matters in a new covenant context. When we look at the prophets and you read the prophets, you see the epitome of fools who are hardening their hearts against wisdom. The prophets call out wisdom and scoffers scoff. The kings, the history of the kings in Israel, they show us that you can have wisdom and lose wisdom and find it again. And then your kid will forget it, and then the next kid will regain it. And it's this up and down relationship with wisdom. And so wisdom is so central to understanding the Bible. So we'll get into this now. It's a short chapter, so I wanted to just riff a little bit on some of my thoughts as we move into chapter 10. I was just really it was impressed upon me this morning at just the great treasure we have in knowing plainly what wisdom is, and knowing that Christ is transforming us into men and women who are wise. And that's a great thing. So verses 1 through 6 is the invitation to wisdom's house. And just a couple example or observations here. One, wisdom built her house and she has hewn her 7 pillars. Now this sent me on a rabbit hole this morning, just trying to figure out what the 7 pillars were. Nobody knows. What I think it is like, so wisdom's house, if you live in wisdom's house, then you're wise. And the 7 pillars are the foundation of the house. And so what are the 7 pillars? Well, I think they could represent like 7 main themes of a wise person. Now, I think ultimately Solomon just included the word 7, the number 7, because it represents completeness. So there are far more than 7 themes in Proverbs, but I think it could represent that. Uh, the numbers don't have to match up because it's representative. But anyway, she built her own house, 7 pillars. That means that it's a large house. She slaughtered her beast and mixed her wine. So there's a nice feast. The beasts are, that's for the meat, for the feast, for the banquet. She mixed her wine. That's sounds like she's going a little above and beyond, which is great. It's going to be a nice little get together. And she set her table, multiple forks and spoons and knives, and you got drinking glasses and tablecloths and all this stuff. I mean, you got servants. I mean, this is gonna be nice. And what I think this is the next 20 chapters. that's the feast that she's inviting us to, because the Proverbs really begin in chapter 10. That's where we see the actual Proverbs. A proverb is like a short, pithy riddle type statement that gives us a not mysterious truth, but a poetic truth. And so I think that's what she's inviting us to. She sent out all her young people to call the evangelists. This, by the way, is just like the wedding banquet in Luke 14 and Matthew 22, where the Jews didn't want to come to the party, and so they sent out their servants to the highways and the byways, calling everyone to come in. So Jesus knows this chapter well, and he's using it for his own stories. I mean, what makes more sense than responding to a call to be saved? And that's the ultimate of response to wisdom. So there's an invitation. Whoever's simple, let him turn in here. I mean, it's similar to, if you're poor in spirit, come here. If you don't have anything, come here. So there is a lot of similarities between this call and the gospel's call. It's just that the way of wisdom is more like, hey, just add to your lacking. And the gospel is, hey, give up everything you have. You're not adding anything to your righteousness. You have no righteousness. It's a trade. This is an addition. Eat the bread, drink the wine. Just reminds me of the Lord's Supper that Jesus modeled after this, seemingly. Leave your simple ways and live and walk in the way of insight. Okay, so that's wisdom's invitation. And a pretty simple invitation. It looks nice. It just has a great feel. You know, this banquet's gonna be awesome. It's in a beautiful house. Like, who wouldn't go? Basically, is what I'm getting at. Who wouldn't go? And that's your option. Now, 7 through 12 is a little bit of an aside into explaining why the little wisdom evangelist people don't invite the mockers and the scoffers. And they're not invited because, well, they reject wisdom. And this is an exact example of what Jesus teaches in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 7, where he says, do not throw your pearls before swine. Do not give to dogs what is holy. They don't see the value in it. If you give a pearl to a pig, he has no indication that that pearl is valuable. All he wants is food. And when he bites on that pearl and it hurts his teeth, he's going to spit it out and be angry. When you have a holy, sanctified piece of meat that you used for an offering, there will be no reverence if a dog eats it. It's just another slab of meat to him. And that is wisdom to a scoffer. Sees no value in it. In fact, when you give it to him, it makes him mad. That's the pig with the pearl. And so this is an example of that. And that's 7 through 12. Don't correct the scoffer. You're going to get abused. If you reprove a wicked man, you're going to get injured. Don't reprove a scoffer. He'll hate you. But if you reprove a wise man, he will love you. Here's an indication to know if we are wise men. When we are corrected, do we love the person who corrects us? Which disciple are you? Are you the scoffer or are you the wise man? This is a great way to tell. When a wise man hears instruction, he gets wiser. When a righteous man gets instruction, he increases in learning. Verse 10, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is insight. For by me your days will be multiplied, and years will be added to your life. Benefits of wisdom. If you're wise for yourself. If you scoff, you alone will bear it. So I think that just points to the personal responsibility that comes with this decision. You're either going to live in the way of wisdom, or the way of folly, and you will be rewarded based on what you choose and what you model your life off of. Okay, lastly, it's Folly's turn to invite. Notice that she gets the last word. Isn't that crazy? That God would allow Folly to have the last word? Look, Jesus says in the Gospels that wisdom is vindicated by her children. And in other words, he doesn't need to go into a debate to prove the superiority of wisdom. Wisdom is superior in every way. And the options on the table, literally, the banquet is set. And to the fool, to the simple, to the one who needs wisdom most, folly is always going to get the final word because it's loudest, it's appealing, it's what the person wants eventually, and that's how it goes. So this woman, Folly, is loud, she's seductive, but she knows nothing. This is the same woman in Proverbs chapter 5, the adulterous woman. It's the same woman in Proverbs chapter 7. She leads you somewhere she doesn't even know where. And she's loud and obnoxious and seductive. She sits at the door of her house. And then that just gives you the sense of like, you're invited, yeah, but she's not really welcoming. You know, it's not like a warm environment. I just picture like a low hanging roof and like a porch. I picture like being down in the bayou in someone's um like swamp house. I don't think they call them swamp houses, but like this old lady rocking on a rocking chair with a raspy voice and a cigarette in her mouth, inviting you to come in. Like that's the picture you guys get, right? That's the invitation you have, and that's what you're giving up from Lady Wisdom. Like her nice banquet. She's like on this beautiful plantation with like orchards and oak trees lining the long driveway. And she's come down her steps and she's standing there just like with her arms open as you drive up. She's so excited to see you, and she's beautiful, warm. The kids are running around playing, and you just feel like there's nowhere else you'd rather be. And you're happy because you just came from Lady Folly, who's loud and seductive and knows nothing. She's sitting, rocking on a rocking chair at the door of her house with her cigarette. She also takes a seat on the highest places of the town, meaning she'll get to you. Like she gets on a radio show, and you hear about this invitation too somehow. And she's getting to everybody. She's calling to all those who pass by her, going straight on their way. You think you're going to Lady Wisdom's house, but somehow she gets to you, and she's going to get the final word. So it's going to be your decision. Wisdom's not going to call back and give you another chance to hear the invitation. You know the invitation, and you got to remember it, and you got to have the discipline to ignore foolishness. And this represents anything that's causing you to walk out of the way, to sin against Christ, to do what you shouldn't do and you shouldn't do. This is a war for your attention. What are you going to pay attention to? The rest of your life, what are you going to commit to pay attention to? Wisdom or folly? She says, whoever's simple, let him turn in here. And to him who lacks sense, it's the exact same thing that wisdom says. It's the same invitation, but it's packaged very differently. Because what comes next, stolen water is sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. Now that's a proverb, by the way. That is a proverb. And we're going to get to know those very well. This is temptation to sinful pleasure. So here's the difference. Folly's invitation comes with temptation for sinful pleasure. But wisdom takes discipline. And how are you going to live your life? Because if you lack discipline, you die. It leads to death. Verse 18, but he does not know that the dead are there, and her guests are in the depths of Sheol. That's what's waiting for you beyond the door. You pass her in the rocking chair. You got to like duck to get in this door because it's so short. It's dim. There's cobwebs everywhere. There's no music because she can't afford it. There's nothing good. And all the guests are dead. And that's where you're headed. So that's chapter 9. And your decision to make daily is, are you going to live by wisdom or folly? What disciple are you? Are you the one that falls into um, foolish behavior, sinful behavior, and gets up via repentance and gets back on the path? You can do that as many times as necessary, by the way. We fail every single day. Or are you one that fails? You get into foolish Lady Folly's house and you stay there. You get comfortable there. At first, the couch looks disgusting. I mean, you would never sit on that couch. It's like cat hair. There's cigarette butts like in the cushions. It absolutely stinks. But after a while being there, you can sit there and then you lean back and you get comfortable. Is that the kind of disciple you are that gets comfortable? Because here's the deal. I just cut myself off, but it happens. You can get comfortable in any sin. Don't be so arrogant to think you would never do that. It's a slippery slope. And that's what Psalm chapter 1 tells us. Blessed is the man who doesn't walk in the way of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers. That's that nasty couch. That's the seat of scoffers. And that's where we're headed if we don't get back on the path of wisdom. All right. Well, that's chapter 9. Tomorrow we will begin the actual Proverbs of the book of Proverbs.